Alright, what's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video on the channel. I hope y'all are having a good day. And PUBG 2, this may not be as crazy as it sounds. In fact, this has a very realistic shot that this is going to happen. The thing is, though, the details aren't as simple as simply calling the game PUBG 2, slapping a label on it, and shipping it out, right? There's actually a lot more interesting detail that we have to go over today, but there may be either some kind of sequel or like re-release or rebuild of PUBG coming in the distant future, and we're going to jump into all that today. Now, if you're excited at the prospect of a PUBG 2 or a rebuild, then be sure to leave a like rating on the video. I'd like to see a gauge of like how interested everyone is generally in a thing like this, because it's very fascinating. And also, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, not only so you don't miss more videos like this, but also so you don't miss tomorrow's video, which may be one of the best pieces of content I've ever uploaded, and you guys aren't going to want to miss it, so stick around for that. PUBG 2 has been a concept that isn't very new. This idea has been thrown around a lot, especially in the earlier days of PUBG. I never really took this idea too seriously, to be honest, just because it felt utterly pointless to, take the battle royale that has already got big and popular, re-release it by slapping a 2 on it, giving it some more extra features or whatever, but essentially, at the end of the day, is the same game. The bread and butter of Battlegrounds is still in that. I felt like it would be convoluted and pointless to re-release the game again. Whenever this topic would come up, my answer would roughly always be the same. I would just say, I think it's better to put the effort of developing an entirely new game and put that towards the main game that we already have, whether that be adding new content or, changing the quality of life, fixing bugs and glitches, and just overall refining this game to a point where it's, I guess, essentially just as good as having a sequel, if not better than a re-release of the game. But that honestly doesn't look exactly like that's happening. PUBG has a lot of projects that are going to be coming to us in the future, whether that be within the next year or maybe even a longer time span. Some of these smaller projects we already know about and are absolutely no secret at all, such as Vikendi Remastered and even some other like small pieces of content that are coming to the main game. But some of these out-of-game projects or just different studios entirely, like Glenn Schofield's Striking Distance, who are developing a single-player story in the PUBG universe, and also even Prologue, which is being developed by PlayerUnknown himself, isn't necessarily PUBG related, but is going to be, I guess, roughly within the same realm. And it turns out, alongside all of these already being developed projects, a new one has just opened up in South Korea. All of this information is plainly available to everybody going on the PUBG website, and under careers, when you go to the South Korean tab, which is actually where the main BR studio is to begin with, there are some new jobs that have opened up under a codename Project Xtreme. And as it turns out, these job listings are exactly what you would need to either rebuild a game or theoretically design a game from the ground up of your own. So a lot of these listings, we have software engineers, back-end developers, data engineers, UI designers, and even developers that are experienced with the Unreal Engine, which PUBG is currently using. So now, unfortunately, there is no real time frame we can look at for Project Xtreme, but to be honest, it's still pretty under wraps. So I'd imagine all of this is just sort of getting concept and started, but all of the projects that are already being worked on, such as Glenn Schofield's game, we're probably going to see that first before Project Xtreme, whatever that ends up being, comes out. Now, this opens the door for a lot of really cool stuff. Now, let's talk about what Project Xtreme or PUBG 2 could be, because as I said earlier, I never thought PUBG 2 was a good idea in the way that we were talking about it, but I've actually changed my opinion on that a little bit, giving all of the new information. I've recontextualized how I think about this, and now I feel like PUBG 2, or a complete PUBG rebuild, whatever we want to call this at the moment, Project Xtreme could actually be a very, very good idea for the game. Now, if we look at the trend of how the game's direction has moved over time after the new management had taken over, we can clearly see what they want to do with this game, with Erangel Remastered coming out and even Vikendi being released, and even some really experimental ideas that are started off small scale but then end up being translated to, big time features over time. For example, the destructible environments and even bullet penetration in Karakin, I look at as like almost one big testing ground. It feels like they're using this map to try out some features that they're not really sure about yet and need to work out the kinks kinks first before they fully implement them. And you can kind of tell when it comes to the bullet penetration, you can't do that on every surface. It's a very gimmicky thing in Karakin because only one wall can do it, and everyone expects that it's coming if you see that wall. In my opinion, this was less about having bullet penetration as a viable mechanic in a map and more just of a proof of concept, if you will, that bullet penetration can work in PUBG, as that's never been a thing before, and people have wondered why. It seems obvious in an FPS game based on realism that bullet penetration would be a thing in this game, but since it's not, this kind of reflects the bigger problem that to have a lot of these things that we feel like PUBG should either fix or add, it would need to be rebuilt from the ground up. So let's say hypothetically PUBG is being rebuilt. Now, I honestly don't even think that's a hypothetical. I believe it is happening, but let's just say PUBG Xtreme is going to be a PUBG rebuild, and they're able to completely redesign this game from scratch, keeping the fundamentals and core gameplay that makes PUBG so addicting, but also at the same time adding some new additions that maybe should have been in the game to begin with, but the engine or the current build just didn't allow for it. What things do we want to see? I've been doing a bit of thinking about this, and in my opinion, an ideal re-release or rebuild of PUBG would include a couple of things. A small story mode that will not only introduce you to the universe and maybe a couple characters in the PUBG universe, but will also get you familiar with the mechanics before jumping into BR or Team Deathmatch, especially if people are brand new. Another side mode of TDM that is designed very similarly how the one we have currently, which I think is just an awesome build. And obviously we have the main course of Battle Royale. Now, a couple of changes to the BR that we could probably see are things like overhauled movement. A fair criticism of PUBG has been the movement in this game is slow, clunky, and not very intuitive. And while there isn't a lot you can do in terms of fluid movement with a realistic game like PUBG, I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be, but I will admit it has room for improvement. Cleaning up a lot of the current player animations and even adding some new ones that, particularly in vehicles, I think getting in and out of cars, being able to physically see that would be a good thing. Reviving is another big one. I think that animation could be changed, and maybe now we'll finally see the prone rolling animation that was originally intended for this game but just wasn't compatible. And speaking of which, remember how I mentioned the riot shield, the most infamous item that never was? It couldn't be fully implemented into PUBG because it wasn't compatible with the current movement system, and I've mentioned that, but now I'm finally putting two and two together. This all starts to make sense. I think all of the mentioned changes that we've talked about are very likely to happen in this Project Xtreme, this PUBG rebuild, and ideally this would be a free-to-play thing. If they wanted to completely re-release PUBG and make it free-to-play for everyone, have a better anti-cheat system, because that is a very complicated topic for another video. I'm not going to go into that today, but essentially PUBG isn't free-to-play right now, and maybe shouldn't be, because it's only going to increase the amount of troll hackers. And so if they can implement better anti-cheat into this new build of the game to keep it more locked down for hackers, it's never going to be completely perfect, but make it, reasonable, giving a completely redesigned free-to-play battle royale for everyone, keeping the PUBG formula of what makes it an addicting game in the first place, but expanding on it, potentially giving it its own little story mode and tons of other features that we can't even speculate on just because they're not even concepted yet. It hasn't really soaked in how massive of a project this could actually be. Now, with all of that information on the table, I really doubt that this rebuild of the game is going to be called PUBG 2. That would be confusing, wouldn't make a lot of sense, and I think would just sort of be shooting themselves in the foot. I imagine this is going to be either an update or a re-release to people who have maybe already purchased the game if it's not free to play. I really think PUBG has a huge opportunity here with this Xtreme. Now, this could end up being a PUBG Renaissance, right? And think back to when this game first came out, when the popularity of not only the genre but the game itself was exploding. We could see a renaissance of this game, and that's honestly not unheard of. Minecraft had a very similar thing. The key factor here, this is going to have to be something big. It's going to need to capture the attention of almost every Battle Royale fan there is, and hopefully would bring back a lot of original players to this game. But they have a huge opportunity here. I would hate to see them squander it. With that in mind, I don't really care how long it takes for Project Xtreme to release. I just want it to be done right. And what I want to know from you guys is what things at all, it can be big or small, would you want to see out of Project Xtreme? Because this is their opportunity to really listen to the community and try to get it right here. You guys have heard my opinions on this. I essentially want a more complete game that is much better in terms of anti-cheat, and that is not a prevalent feature, and it certainly doesn't turn people away. Better performance, and I would even say free to play is a good idea at this point, to expand and diversify your player base as much as humanly possible to give yourselves the most amount of opportunity in game. Really, get creative as possible. If PUBG can rebuild this game from scratch, what needs to change? What needs to be added and what needs to be removed? I would love to hear your guys' responses below. Now, if I had to give you a rough estimate of when Project Xtreme is either going to be releasing or just when we can hear more about it officially, I think it's not going to be anytime soon. Don't expect it within the next like month or two, but perhaps by the end of 2020, we may be seeing some official like gameplay or news on it, and then probably released by sometime early next year. I don't know, that's ballparking it. But again, as I made very clear earlier in the video, I don't really care if they release it quickly. I just want them to release it right. Take their time on it and make sure it's done well when it does come out. I feel we've got a really exciting year ahead of us, all things considered, with the projects we know are coming. It's just like, I kind of feel like a kid waiting for Christmas, right? Hopefully we'll get some more official information soon and we can further speculate on what we'll be playing, or maybe even see a little bit of footage of it. That would be awesome. But for now, that's pretty much all we got to talk about. But it's huge news, and I genuinely want to know what you guys think and what particularly about this PUBG rework would bring you back. But that's going to be pretty much it for the video, guys. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please make sure to give the video a like rating, subscribe if you are new to the channel around here, and also you guys can go follow me over on Twitch if you haven't already. The link to that is in the description. I'm streaming almost every single day, and I would really appreciate it. But I'm going to go for now. Have a great rest of your day, guys, and I'll see you all on the next stream or the next video. Take it easy, and peace out.